When a young woman takes a night shift at a clothing store, she thinks the silence is the scariest part until the mannequins start moving. What follows is a chilling descent into madness, or something far more sinister. My name is Amber, I'm 24, and if you've ever wondered who works in stores after hours, here I am. I've been working the graveyard shift for 3 months now at Brixton Company, a huge clothing store located in the middle of one of Illinois' largest malls. Everything is different at night. I'm not talking about the dim lighting or the silence, though both play a role. I'm talking about that special feeling when you realize that this entire store, filled with hundreds of voices, footsteps, and music during the day, is now dead. Lifeless. Or it should be lifeless. My shifts were simple: hanging merchandise, cleaning fitting rooms, changing displays, and, most importantly, moving mannequins. Our store had a lot of them. Too many. Big, shiny, faceless. Some were full-length, others were waist-length, and there were even some that were attached to the walls and hung like severed body parts. The first alarming moment happened on my 4th night. I was walking along the men's section when I noticed one of the mannequins. He was facing the wall. This was not part of the design, and definitely not my work. I went over and turned him back, plastic hands, with a characteristic creaking sound. I went back to my business. A couple of hours later, when I turned off the light in the section to go to the warehouse, I saw him again. He was again facing the wall. I froze. Not because I was scared. Then I said to myself, probably someone from the day shift was fooling around. But a cold lump was already stirring in my chest. I just ignored it and went to another part of the store. The next week, the situation began to develop. I noticed that the mannequins seemed to change positions between my movements around the hall. I remember one time exactly. I put 2 female figures side by side, leaning one on top of the other. When I returned, they were standing at a distance, with their backs to each other. I decided not to panic again. Perhaps one of the security guards came in and decided to help. But then I found out that no one except me entered the building at night. The doors are locked after 10 p.m., cameras record the entrances, and the security guards are on the opposite side of the mall at this time. And then the sounds began. During one of my shifts, I heard a quiet scraping sound. Metallic, as if someone was moving something heavy across the floor. At first I thought it was a cart. But we put the carts in the utility room, and I have the key. I followed the sound. It led me to the main display case. There were 5 mannequins there. Silhouettes of women in evening gowns, wigs, and hats. All were in their places. Except one. One mannequin stood closer to the glass, almost touching the display case. I knew I had placed it further away so that the light would illuminate the entire group evenly. I approached slowly. His wrist was broken, twisted in an unnatural position, as if the fingers were trying to grab something. I grabbed him by the waist and pulled him back. The plastic felt warm for a moment. Real. My brain resisted the thought. I couldn't be sure, but I definitely felt it. Warmth, like skin, and a pulse. Fast. Rhythmic. I let go of the mannequin. It swayed slightly and froze. The next day, I came to work with a flashlight and a whistle. It was stupid, but I felt like I needed at least something to give me confidence. Everything was quiet that night. Too quiet. Around 3 in the morning, I came out of the back room with a box and suddenly heard a ringing sound. Sharp, as if something had hit the glass. I ran to the display case. One of the mannequins, the one with the warm body, was lying on the floor. His face, if you can call it that, was turned in my direction. And again, his hand was broken. Only now it was stretched out in my direction, as if he was trying to reach out. I tried to call security. Without success. The mall was too big, and the radio connection in this wing often glitched. I decided to wait until the morning. And then, the lights started blinking. Along the entire line of the ceiling. A long flash and darkness again. And in those seconds, when everything around was plunging into semi-darkness, I swore I saw movement. Something fast, angular. Figures that seemed motionless turned out to be closer than they should have been. I went back to the back room, locked myself in, and sat there until they opened. The next morning, I was told that the cameras hadn't recorded that night for some reason. A system error. A coincidence. I was offered the day off, but I refused. I needed to know what was going on. I started reading. Forums, blogs, strange occurrences in stores and malls. I came across references to moving mannequins, even old urban legends. People wrote about strange dreams, fainting spells, and employees disappearing. It all seemed crazy until it touched me. And then, on my next shift, I found a note. A small piece of paper tucked into the pocket of a man's jacket hanging in the display case. Scrawled on it were the words, "Don't look them in the eye." For the next shift, I couldn't take my eyes off the mannequins. Every time I passed them, I felt a shiver run down my spine, like someone was looking at the back of my head. I left that note, "Don't look them in the eye," in the pocket of my jeans. I don't know why. Maybe as a talisman. Or as proof that I wasn't crazy. That night, I came in earlier than usual to check the cameras. I knew that everything was recorded on a server in the office on the second floor. Usually, only the manager has access to these recordings, but I found a way in. A temporary password was left on a piece of paper taped to the screen. I rewound the recording to the night the mannequin fell. The video went as usual, me carrying boxes, moving mannequins, then the moment when the lights started to flicker. And then, emptiness. The camera simply jumped from 2:37 to 3:14. Half an hour was gone. No signal dropout, no static, just a blackout. When the image came back, the mannequin was already lying on the floor. Everything looked calm, like it had just fallen. I pressed pause. There was something strange on the screen. In the very corner, where the line of shelves began, there was a figure. Very far away, almost in the shadows. It wasn't a mannequin, it didn't have the characteristic shine. It was too thin. Too crooked. And this was what scared me the most. Its head was tilted to the side. Like it was watching what was happening. I rewound. No figure. Fast-forwarded. It appears. Then it disappears again. I ran down to check the corner. There was nothing there except a couple of boxes of discounted shoes. No tracks, no trash. Just silence. I went back to work, but I kept glancing over my shoulder every few minutes. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a lock click. A dull, metallic sound, like someone had opened one of the service doors. I knew. I locked all the doors. I checked according to the manual. I checked again when I came in. I walked slowly toward the sound. The seconds seemed like an eternity. And then there was a bang. A loud, sharp bang. One of the mannequins fell right in front of me. I screamed and stepped back. He was lying on his back, his arms stretched out in the air, like he was asking for help. Or reaching for me. I bent down to pick him up, and noticed that he had no eyes. Not even a groove for eyes to fit. Just a smooth plastic face, but with tiny scratches, like someone had tried to cut holes from the inside. The next night, I did what I had been afraid to do. I called my partner. I asked Jaylene, the quiet girl on the evening shift, to stay with me for a couple of hours. I told her I didn't feel well alone at night. She agreed, shrugged, and stayed. We checked the windows together. I told her about the disappearing records, about the figure on the camera. She laughed, but it was a bit forced. "Maybe you're just overtired," she suggested. "We've had some weird stuff before, too. Like, one time I came in the morning and there were women's shoes on the floor. One pair had high heels, even though they were always barefoot in the window. We thought one of the customers had planted them." "Have you checked the cameras?" They weren't working. The whole server froze that night. My heart was beating faster. While she was wiping down the glass counters, I went to the utility door backstage to check the locks. And then I heard a voice. Quiet. Barely audible. But female. It whispered, "Amber, don't go." I froze. I thought it was Jaylene, but when I returned to the room, she was in another part of the store, talking on the phone with her mother. I stood there and just looked at her. She didn't say anything, or whisper. We decided to leave together at 3 in the morning. I felt sick, my blood pressure dropped, and Jaylene insisted that I go home. She helped close the store, and we went out into the service corridor. Before leaving, I glanced back into the room one more time. There, among the mannequins standing in the semi-darkness, one turned its head. I swear, I saw it. A sharp, unnatural turn, like a rag doll turned inside out in a hurry. He was looking right at me. I grabbed Jaylen's hand, but when we looked again, everything was the same. The next day, I got a notice. The shift was canceled for today. The entire mall was closed for an unscheduled inspection of the fire suppression system. I figured it was for the best. I needed to rest. But that evening, I got a text from Jaylen. You couldn't have left that fitting room door open? I closed it. I'm sure. But this morning, it was found open from the inside. The text included a photo, a crack in the door where someone had written in the dust with a finger. You shouldn't have stayed. I thought a day off would help me recover. I tried to sleep, but woke up at 4 in the morning with a sharp sensation, as if someone was standing in the corner of the bedroom, watching. The lights were off, and I was afraid to move. It took me a minute to realize that I was home, alone, and that this sensation was just the remnants of fear ingrained in my skin. But even in bed, I seemed to feel them. The mannequins. Their empty faces, they're motionless, but still living bodies. I tried to convince myself that it was all the result of overwork, that the voice was a hallucination, that the figure on the camera was an optical illusion. But then, why was I still carrying the note in my pocket like an amulet? The next day, the mall reopened. I was back on schedule. No one mentioned the strange events, and it was as if everyone wanted to forget. Only Jaylene looked at me somehow differently, not with mockery, but with concern. She was silent, but I felt that she knew too, or at least suspected. That night I decided to stay until the end. Until the morning. Whatever happened, I had to understand, was I crazy or not? I turned on all the possible lights in the sales area. I put a flashlight nearby. I took a voice recorder with me, just in case. And I began to wait. The hours dragged on like tar. Until 2 in the morning, nothing happened. Not a sound, not a rustle. Even the air conditioning was turned off, complete silence. I went to the display case. The same mannequin was standing there again, with a twisted arm. How had I not noticed it before? Or was it in another place when I came? And suddenly the light began to flicker. Once, twice, 3 times. Then everything went dark. I rushed for the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and tore movement out of it. Fast, sharp, in the background. I turned around, no one. Only, the mannequin was standing closer than before. Now right behind me. I rushed into the utility room and slammed the door. My breath caught. I turned on the recorder and whispered, "What's going on? Who are you?" There was no answer. Then, there was a knock. Quiet. Right at the door. 3 knocks. A pause. Then again. And again. I screamed, "I'll call security." Silence. I pressed myself against the wall. And at that moment the recorder, still on, began to distort my voice. A creak, a noise, a hum. And then, someone else's voice. Hoarse. Low. Not mine. "You're already one of us." I lost consciousness. I came to, already on the floor, the utility room filled with the dim light of an emergency lamp. Everything was quiet. I ran out into the hall. All the mannequins were standing in their places. As always, not a single one was moving. Only, one mannequin was different. It had human hair. Red, like mine. And it was wearing the same clothes I had come to work in. I came closer. Everything inside me was getting cold. The mannequin stood with its head slightly tilted to the side. and on its fingers I saw scratches. Blood. My blood. On the display case next to it, someone had written with a marker, "You left." But she stayed. I never went back to that job. I moved to another city. I changed my number. I started avoiding malls, stores, mannequins. But sometimes when I walk past a display case, it seems to me that one of them turns its head. I went to a therapist. He said it was stress, paranoia. But then, during one of the sessions, he pulled out my old tape recorder from the drawer, which I had lost that night, and said, "Found in the return box. Does it belong to you?" I took it, turned it on. The last recording. "You are already one of us." My voice. But I don't remember saying that.